Hey folks, how you doing? Nick Jennison. We are sat here in Cameron House in Loch Lomond in the basement, but the basement is still very lovely, with the one, the only, Mr. Rob Chapman.
Hello. It's very nice to be here with Nick Jennison and Jonathan.
So we're here at the Guitar Dreams retreat, yeah, right?
It feels like a dream, doesn't it?
Doesn't it? Doesn't it just, right? It feels like one of those events where, you know, you'll go away and you'll tell people about it and go, man, you had to be there. You had to be there.
The amount of sausage offering at breakfast,
Yeah.
is pretty spectacular.
3 shapes of sausage.
It's like the shapes. That's but we're too stupid and so the friends, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the shapes, not the kind of specialty or the flavor.
Yeah.
It's the 3 square.
3 sausage form.
Because you're in Scotland, I have square, so you could stuff it in a sheep's stomach and call it a different name.
Yeah.
Or put it in a traditional tube.
So, like, Rob, tell us about your experience of the event so far.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure what to expect because, you know, come to a Guitar Dream, it's going to be small numbers of people, spectacular guitar players, historic, crazy opportunity, really. And what I try and do is just kind of go a bit insular and pretend it's not a big deal so that I don't get overwhelmed by meeting people like, everyone that's here. Yeah, I mean, my God.
Yeah. For those who maybe don't know who we're talking about, the guests of honor are Robin Ford, Larry Carlton, Earl Slick is here.
Yeah.
Like, it's a star-studded event.
So I've met Robin Ford before, and obviously, Larry Carlton, Earl Slick, amazing, incredible player. But for me, just on a personal note, it was listening to, Robbie, John, Guthrie Trapp, I mean, honestly, some of us were in tears listening to Robbie play.
Yeah.
His slide playing, if you haven't heard, I mean, it's just a joke.
Yeah,
I don't know how he does it, quite frankly. My wife went, it's like a woman singing. I was like, yeah, no, that is what it's like,
Yeah.
And hearing some of the fingerstyle stuff, because I don't do that. I'm not I half-ass it by hybrid picking, It's not full fingerstyle because I can't do that. It's too much brain compute.
Yeah.
But some of the music is beautiful. And I think I get hired and paid to do the shredding thing.
Yeah.
But really, if you listen to my music, a lot of it's old rootsy blues, rock, Americana. I come from the Ron Block, Dan Tyminski, Jerry Douglas, Jimi Hendrix, Peter Green world. And then I aspire to be like Joe Satriani, fail, and then where I miss and hit the mark is where I am.
Yeah.
So I love music so much more than anything else, and to hear real musicians playing some beautiful pieces of music was really nice.
So I want to pick you up on that, the business of being hired as a shredder, and because can relate, but I want to know how you think this kind of came to pass, and how you feel about not being that guy in your heart of hearts, but people that are actually sash in the
partly, yeah. I love the Bandbacan. Yeah, I love to rip an 80s. I mean, I come from that. I was born in 75. I grew up in the 80s of what an amazing time, and it was just phenomenal. So I love all that stuff. But when I write, I don't write shred. But because I could do it to an extent, I mean, I'm not a phenomenal shredder, but I do it enough that people went, oh, he's the guy that could do that, and then I got hired to do it.
Right.
So it was always, Rob will do the high gain pedal shootout. We'll get Rob to do the blindfold high gain amplifier shootout. And I'm like, actually, what I'd rather have is like a great British crap, like a 1974X, and a little stop box, no compressor, bare bones. I need a reverb, or I'm just dead.
Yeah. Same. Yeah. A bit of thought goes a long way.
Yeah. So it is what it is. I love everything, man. I'm not. I'm kind of genre agnostic. Big fan of Tina Turner. Big fan of Paul Simon.
Yeah.
Love me some Hendrix. But then I love, Tony McAlpine, Yngwie Malmsteen, and everything really. I suppose that's the thing. I'm just thankful that I'm even sat here. I turned 50 in like 2 weeks' time, and I'm like, still get to do this I get to do this. It's amazing.
That is pretty cool, because we talk about this quite a lot. These moments we sit down and you go, how did I get here?
Yeah.
And how do we end up in this situation doing what we're doing now with in this company that we're in? Talk to me about, because you've had a long, storied career doing this. Like, talk to me about some of the moments where you've had that, where you've had this kind of little realization of, oh shit, I'm really doing this.
I suppose it started at Abbey Road working with Eddie Kramer. So just purely by fluke. Well, not by fluke, but my drummer at the time, Ian Brenchley, hey Ian, was a pizza delivery boy. Ended up doing like administrative mail, running around for record labels, EMI, and that was a thing. And EMI got bought out. He ended up at Universal Records, ended up the marketing director. He gave me all the session work. And so my first ever session was Yngwie Malmsteen live in Leningrad. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to... It was so crazy hard. And then one day he went, we're going to record this EP with our band at the time called The Black Hand. I was like, yeah. He goes, we're going to go to Abbey Road. And they're like, oh, where's that? So I didn't know anything. And he went, no, it's quite a big studio. I was like, okay, that sounds really cool, man. Is it expensive? No, the label will pay for it. I was like, all right. We got a guy called Eddie coming to record us. I'm like, oh, all right, cool. Who's that? Oh, Eddie Kramer. Just look him up on Google. And okay. I mean, what the hell? And Eddie was in town doing an exhibition of his photography because he's a really good photographer. And Ian and the label were like, look, since you're in town anyway, do you want to come to Abbey Road, rekindle some nostalgic memories, work with our band, for like super duper mates race? And he went, yeah, let me hear the music and then I'll tell you. And he listened and went, yeah, okay, I'm in. And he engineered a lot of Jimi Hendrix, did what with everyone, Stones, Steve Vai, everyone that I loved. He had a very good relationship with and worked with, and still does with the families, for example. And he took me under his wing and kept me there and developed me in ways that I can never repay. He gave me what I call the third awareness. So the first awareness is, I'm look at my fingers and how they're making this shape, And then the next one is, how does that sound to me? That's the second awareness. So you go, okay, it sounds... There's some of that unwanted noise, there's some muting. And then it's, how does it sound to someone else? That's the third awareness. What's going to get that emotional response from a listener? And when you have that awareness, suddenly it changes the way you play completely when you're really committing to an album. Because if I'm demonstrating a product and I want something to look spectacular, I'll play in a very different way. I'll be a lot more, But when I'm recording a solo, I'd never really do that on a solo. I would want a vocal line. So I would want to be a vocalist through my hand. And the way that I would get that would be very different. So you make different decisions because you're speaking to something. He used to tell me the problem with recording Jimmy was that he would want to do 15 takes and every recording was a take. And it was more of which one has the spirit that you need. So he really made me think outside of being a guitar player and a lot more about the vibe that people pick up from the music. So that was the first part. And then it was, the YouTube thing, shooting, silly videos, just having fun, being an idiot and just being myself. And getting hired by Andertons to do stupid shit, with leads. And that led to, Toman and Guitar Center wanting to work with me. And at one point I was everywhere and it was almost too much for me. I didn't want to put on YouTube because my face and I want to look at a demo from someone else, But that ubiquity meant that people who were people that I absolutely idolized would recognize me and relate to me. So when I met them invariably at places like, Larvik Guitar Festival or the NAMM show, they'd be like, "Hey, Rob," and I'm like, "Oh my God, that's Paul Gilbert. Oh my God, that's Joe Satriani or that's Steve Vai." And then I would play with them and they would treat me as if I was one of them. I'm not one of them. They don't know. And then that means suddenly you get access to this little club of unbelievable human creatures and they start sharing information and it's mad. And they're so giving. What I've noticed is, I don't know whether people will relate to this or not. It might cause a bit of controversy, but guitar players are quite bitchy and, "Oh yeah, that guy's not very good," or I'm way better than that guy. They might not even say it, but they'll feel it. Whereas when you get into the sort of the people that have really established and made it, there's no competition at all. And all they want to do is share. So for example, I was backstage at Larvik with Paul Gilbert and he's like, "Oh yeah, let me show you this thing I did." And I'm like, "I'm getting a guitar lesson from Paul Gilbert here. This is insane." And he's showing me this picking and he went, "I challenge you to do this rhythm thing." And I'm like, "Paul, I can't, I'm rubbish with rhythm." He's like, no, try this." And then I had the same experience with Steve Vai. And then just again and again, people at the top of their careers, they share and they give. And I love that about these musicians that I have the privilege to work with now. I love every kind of guitar player, but I wish that spirit would drip down a bit more.
Yeah.
And be a bit less competitive.
I think it's something worth talking about. It's something that maybe doesn't get spoken about enough. Is the community aspect of because the guitar space is very small, and everyone isn't kind of connected to everyone. Obviously, these guys at the upper echelon that you're talking about there, that's a different thing entirely. But you're astonished how many people you know when you come to an event like this.
And the thing is that it's a teeny tiny community.
Yeah.
So if you have that arrogance or that kind of, I don't know what else to call it, but sort of that kind of arrogance, everyone in the industry knows and they all talk about it before you turn up. Whereas if you're just nice, there's enough listeners to get your music to that, there's no competition really.
Yeah.
There's only one Nick Jennison, So
It's probably a good thing.
By the way, man, I hadn't heard you sing.
Oh yeah, we were jamming last night. Right.
You got some serious pipes, man.
Very kind.
Very
And that's high praise, man. Coming from yourself.
Thank you, sir.
High praise.
I was really, really impressed. You reminded me of a louder version of Richie Kotzen, which I love.
Rich is my guy. He's yeah. So we were talking a little bit off camera about what goes into the tone of a great electric guitar. Now I realize there's only so many things you can tell me here, right? So don't feel you have to say anything that you can't. But as someone with the golden ears and the owner of a guitar company, talk to me a little bit about what goes into making a great sounding electric guitar.
Oh, the player is number one. So the tone starts. Wow, I stuttered. The reason I'm stuttering there is because I have so many connections in business to people that have knowledge in areas around this that in some instances cannot be spoken about for lots of reasons. It's stupid to say that, but it's true. So yeah, the player.
So if you notice any clumsy edits, that's what's happened.
That'll be what it is.
Yeah.
Let me start with the player. The air pressure, the temperature, and the humidity. The pick and the pick placement. So look, I'm using a new X Trident.
Which we're going to get to because this thing is fantastic.
Yeah, it's really good. And I'm using a digital rig. But look, even if I, that made noise. It's weird, wasn't it? I shouldn't do that. Should it? But if I play here, it has a particular kind of sound. But slightly less nasal here. It's different depending on where you pick. But also, like Guthrie Trapp was showing me, if you pick with that, it's a particular kind of sound. If you pick with that, actually you can shred a lot faster.
Interesting.
Yeah, I know, it's mad. I didn't realize you could, but it's got a shut.
Yeah, that.
As opposed to, that's what walking down the steps.
Yeah,
as opposed to shut.
Yeah, and the other one's more of a pronounced chirp.
Yeah,
the point of the note.
Chirp. That's exactly the right word for it. So anyway, all of the frequencies from the strings go into the physics system that is the entire guitar and the person holding it. And the entire system is a vampire sucking frequencies away until they stop. And what happens is the remaining frequencies that aren't soaked up as much are spoken by the pickups. So in fact, it's the reverse of what many tone mode proponents would hope you believe. You know, a maple cap doesn't give you a bright sound. It will soak up a bit more of the low end because it's a dense material. And then very marginally, some of the high end is more pronounced when it comes out in pickups. Because the strings are speaking, unless you've got microphonic pickups.
Which is something we were talking about, which I have.
Yeah, by design. They're waxed or lacquered or, you know. So there are lots of things. Is the guitar being played loud? Very big difference. And is it being produced? Because if anyone's ever mixed a guitar, you don't want that part and you don't want that part. You want that bit. Yeah. Because it needs to fit amongst another, you know, what, all the drums and cymbals, the vocalist, diva guy, and then the bass player wants to have some kind of treble, otherwise no one's going to hear it on an iPhone. You know, so like the guitar has to go kind of there. So you remove vast quantities of guitar. It makes a difference. If you're playing loud through a big valve amp with a clean to crunch, and you try playing in different positions, different materials, you'll hear the difference, and it's known. Not only is it known, it's proven in science. I've spoken to the guys at CERN, and they have to know the entire current standard of physics for vibrations in the system and how it goes through electromagnetic. They have to know it. And they said, no, of course it makes a tremendous difference, but you're only listening to that bit. You're not listening to the whole part. And a lot of it is occurring in some of the low end that's being removed, vampired by the system. Yeah. What you pick up on more as a player, and you attest to this, is that obviously it's affecting the tone depending on how much gain and compression and everything you use. It's always watered down through every step of the system, but you'll feel it. And there's a term that we haven't quite coined yet in guitar that we really need to try and find. If you can help us find it as well, it would really help.
Yeah, we were talking about this. We're making the analogy of mouthfeel for food.
There's the feel of how it feels to play the guitar because it's set up a certain way.
Yeah.
And then there's the feel of it giving back vibration to the hand. And if you've ever played, I'm talking to you, if you've ever played a guitar that's like you play it and it's just completely dead, there's nothing vibrating back at you, there's a horrible feeling. But if you get a guitar that's empathetically resonating, it's so pleasant. It just feels great in the hand. And so that is a part of the whole physics system. If you want to know if your guitar's good, strum the strings and just gently touch your finger here. If it's a party in your finger, you know you got a good guitar. Because the whole thing is alive, or the strap button even sometimes.
Yeah.
If you're not feeling it here, don't buy it.
Yeah, we used to do the B string test. The same thing. You'd walk around a guitar shop, and you would hold the upper bout and play the B string.
Bout.
The upper bout. Upper bout, yeah, and play the B string.
Yeah.
And if you feel something, you take that one down and play it. Yeah, so it's a similar sort of thing, you know. But again, this party of resonances up here, you know, it's you can tell. And this is an experiment worth doing with your own guitars, because I'm not for you. I've had guitars myself where you've put every effort into making for a great guitar, and you've thrown the best pickups at them. They're set up and they play very fast and very easily, but there's just something that falls short of greatness.
It's very important to say nothing is better or worse, because how can you measure that?
Yeah.
So for example, the tone of this guitar, you know, Jonathan might hate it. I might love it. Who's right? You know, do you want Chinese or Korean tonight? They're both great. It's whichever one you prefer. So whether the string frequencies are accurately given to the whole system through the bridge and through the nut, and then absorbed in a particular way, does that make it better or worse? No. Yeah, because it's not a binary answer. It gives you that. Do you like that?
Yeah.
That's up to you.
So with that in mind, then, so talking about that, and also talking about these design aspects that you've been speaking to, how does that jive with the collaborative design ethos?
You ask such good questions, Nick Jennison. We try our best. Well, so the thing is, if I was to design a guitar just with that in mind, like I said, I would arrive at a particular kind of guitar that would have a particular kind of tone that people would either like or not. So in a way, it's kind of neither here nor there. As long as it's resonating so that you get that haptic feedback. That's the real term, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's the haptic feedback.
it's not. It is now.
If you're not getting, I think that's what it is. If you're not getting that, it feels like it's dead. And the whole thing, I really find it funny when people talk about sustaining guitars. It's like, how long did you want a note to sustain for? I mean, a lot of sustain is proximity to amplifier, And electric guitars were designed not to sustain. if you know about Gibson and Les Paul, and the whole concept was to make a guitar that didn't have a lot of sustain.
Right.
But
Wait a minute. So tell us a bit more about that.
well, originally electric guitars were hollow, but they sustained too much and they caused feedback and issues, and you couldn't use them on TV. So that the whole idea was to eliminate sustain.
I see. Yeah, to eliminate the acoustic sustain.
Yeah. So the Les Paul was really, it's funny we call it the Les Paul. Les's guitar. If you can actually go and see the original one that he created, which is this giant tree trunk down the center, as much as possible to kill the sustain. So that when he was doing some of this fast stuff, it was just bounding out and out of control and causing all these random harmonics and stuff.
I'm holding a guitar that is, it's chambered to resonate like a semi-hollow to an extent. It has unpotted pickups. I love the way it sounds.
Yeah.
You have to be careful with the control, especially with a lot of gain.
Yeah.
But I hear you. So, speaking of playing with a lot of gain, we would be remiss not to talk about what you're playing through today, because you were playing this at your clinic, right? And this is the New X Trident. First of all, New X is the pronunciation, right?
Yeah, New X.
Okay, there you go. So I've been saying it wrong for years.
They won't care.
There you go. Fair play.
They're very lovely people.
Yeah, so I gather, right?
Actually, in Chinese, it's New X.
So, okay.
And this is called the Santaji, which means three-pronged spear. But it's called New X Trident.
Yeah, I'm going with that one. Yeah, that's a bit more my speed. But so this is what? This is a £300 process.
So it's a 300 quid processor. But the thing, and I'm just going to tell you because they're not here. New X is owned by a company called Cherub Tech. Cherub Tech is a phenomenal high-end. Listen, China's the new Japan. It's unfathomable how much money and tech there is in Southeast Asia. Cherub Tech they're known for making accessories and stands and straps and stuff. But they also OEM and ODM for read between the lines.
Yeah,
The brands.
yeah. So we all know like guitar factories that have their own brand and they ghost build for other brands. This is a similar.
The distinction here is between OEM and ODM. So people are probably familiar with OEM.
Yeah.
Original equipment manufacturer. So I could go to any factory and say, make Chapman guitars for me. And they go, okay, give us the CAD and a couple of guitars. Here you are. And then they make them for me. ODM would be, make me a guitar that does this. Okay. And they have to create it, see. So for example, companies, I'm just going to say some random companies like Boss, for example, or Nobels might go to Cherub, random companies, and say, could you make us pedals do this? They go, yeah, we can do that. Give us a year. And then they own the patent because they created the tech, but they make the product. And then New X is the own brand of Cherub Tech. Right. So what they have is, for example, this £300 unit is 4K white box modeling. So every component is modeled, as you're familiar with, like the Lion, for example. The interactions between everything. You get it, you go, well, it's going to be cheap, so it's going to be shit. And then you plug in and go, oh, yeah, technology's done that thing where it's all flatline. You can't buy a bad digital camera anymore, really. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
So it's just really good. And it's a little bit discerning because I'm a valve hound, but I can't bring a cloud hammer all the way to Scotland on a cheap flight.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. I'm the same. You know, I have my collection of amps that I love.
Yeah.
I don't have much to fly them.
I wasn't sold Nick Jennison until I did my tour in China from Shanghai, Shenzhen, Guangzhou, but all the way down that part of China. And it just sounded sick every night. I was like, my amp is now the PA.
Yeah.
And you know, you can, if you want to plug it into a computer and tweak the mic position, and you can, and I did, to find my one amp tone. Or it's just in here, because it's WYSIWYG.
But it definitely sounds nice. It does sound nice. And as we discussed, the tone begins in the pick.
Oh, it begins in the humidity.
Folks, Rob Chapman, thanks so much for your time, Rob.
Jennison.
See you guys next time.
Bye.